This week, RFK Jr.'s endorsement of Trump turns the political world upside down. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admits his company did censor certain voices in collusion with the Biden administration, and now he says he regrets it. And 3 years later, the pain of 13 lost service personnel during the evacuation of Afghanistan still lingers. These stories and much more coming up this week on The Lion Week in Review. Welcome into this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. It's a weekly look at the culture, the courts, your state capitol, and your kids. I'm Chris Stegall. Now let's meet our panel, some of the men and women behind the stories you read at readline.com. Josh Mann, our managing editor, Michael Ryan, executive editor, and Valerie Cabana is our media contributor and social media manager. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Let's turn to a serious story to kick off the week. It is the third anniversary of a terrible withdrawal from Afghanistan that cost 13 service personnel their lives. This week marks 3 years. Donald Trump at Arlington to commemorate the tragedy. The families of the fallen invited President Trump to Arlington. Joe Biden, second week of vacation in Rehoboth. Valerie.
Yeah, as we look back, this story is never going to get better. It will be tragic from start to finish. And I actually remember when this happened. And I had a really close friend, my best friend at the time. We were 21, and I remember him telling me, that should have been me. He was in the Marines. He knew that other people had families, and he said that should have been me. And then he proceeded to tell me that he had been considering taking his life because of how helpless he felt. And I think that in our military culture, a lot of people struggle with that, and the pin's not put on it enough. The military is not getting all of the care that they need 100% of the time. And I'm just really thankful that Donald Trump showed up this week, and that those lives were honored and remembered. And I would say that we will continue to honor those 13 lives and remember them as time passes. They will not be forgotten.
Michael, this is one of those stories that, in addition to, I think, some questionable discussion about Tim Walz and his time in service, I'm wondering, I have heard stats that say millions of veterans do not vote. I wonder if this story, added on to the Tim Walz story, might cause more veterans to sit up and take notice this year.
Well, you would think so. Certainly this anniversary brings it up. And, to piggyback on Valerie, it's not just a story that won't get better. It's getting worse, actually, because of the administration's actions. We have Vice President Kamala Harris on video bragging that she was the last in the room when this decision was made. I'm not sure I'd want to go there. This was a colossal administration failure and a tragedy for our military. And again, it's been made worse since then. Former Biden administration spokesperson Jen Psaki said in a book, just absolute lie, that it was a hoax, that President Biden was looking at his watch while the caskets of the 13 dead were filing past. He did. It did happen. Biden also seemed to make this event about his own loss of his own son, which was really an insult. And as bad as Watchgate is, Baywatch is even worse, because President Biden's at the beach enjoying the sun in the sand while these 13 are being memorialized. What an insult to the dead.
Josh, you also, back a couple of years ago, have a little insight into this story.
Yeah, at the time when this occurred, actually, it was I was looking back on Monday, and it was on the very day that the Abbey-Gate 13 tragically lost their lives. We talked to a Marine, a local veteran, who wrote a little op-ed for us, and he said literally, he said, the situation in Afghanistan crushes me. And so, I think it is important that we listen to the families of these service members who lost their lives, as well as other service members who served, and how things like this make them feel. And I think it's part of this bigger story of this colossal failure. And it's important that we remember it, and hopefully we learn from it.
Also, since our last show, big news that RFK Jr. ending his independent presidential run. He has decided to endorse Donald Trump. He says he's suspending, actually not ending, but suspending his campaign, to be technical about it, pulling his name off of the states where the primary is pretty tight, pretty competitive. He says that he wants to take his name off the ballot as to not throw the election one direction or another by taking votes from any particular candidate, and in those states he's endorsed Donald Trump. Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, what a name. A Kennedy, decades-long allegiance to the Democratic Party. I mean, Democrats and the Kennedys go together, and yet when you listen to his speech on Friday, it was alarming, it was shocking. I don't think anybody's really surprised by it, but he described the party that he knew as once the party of democracy. But he said he left and ran as an independent because it had, quote, abandoned democracy. These are serious words and accusations. He says that the Democratic Party abandoned its primary voters and concealed the cognitive decline of the president, which we've talked about here, is one of the biggest stories of the year that really is almost forgotten in a lot of mainstream media. He says, in the name of saving democracy, the Democratic Party set itself to dismantling it. And that was the line that I really took away from his speech.
You know, Valerie, the thing about this particular story that I found notable was the way RFK Jr.'s family reacted to him. And I don't know that everyone necessarily pays close attention to politics, or maybe even cares necessarily that RFK Jr. threw in with Donald Trump. But I think a lot of people in this toxic political environment we live in today have that personal family experience of not agreeing with a family member and being locked out, uninvited, blocked on social media or what have you. And I kind of wonder if that registers, Valerie, with some voters out there.
I think what we're seeing in this situation is that a lot of his family members, they're being loyal to the Democrat Party instead of personal values. And I love that RFK has decided, no, my values are greater than a party. And honestly, this is my favorite thing that's happened in this election year so far, is him actually standing up. And it's a huge deal because some of the points that he made, I just really loved, especially his point on the ingredients that are being put in our foods every single day. As someone who tries to live healthy, we should be healthy as Americans. And I think that our government allowing over 2,000 ingredients that are banned in other countries because they're not safe for consumption in our foods, that's really alarming. And I'm really thankful that he has stood up for that. And to kind of touch on what Josh said, for him to say that the left has abandoned democracy, when we actually look at what the left is saying right now, they're saying that Republicans are a threat to democracy, but their candidate hasn't received a single vote to get to where she is.
Michael, this also adds to Tulsi Gabbard's endorsement of Donald Trump this past week. And so I don't know really what it means or how it registers out there with the electorate, if there are, in fact, truly moderates out there or center-left folks. Does this move the needle?
Well, I think, with 200 plus channels and a lot of people not even having cable, we have lost a lot of our shared experiences that we used to have, like the end of a TV series that everyone was watching and unbiased news that we all consumed together. RFK Jr.'s speech has to be a shared experience. It's that good. It's that important. And I know it's hard to watch videos on the internet that are 2 or 3 minutes long, and this is much longer than that. But trust me, it's worth it. This really gives you a sense of the man. It is filled with substance and issues that nobody is talking about. And, somebody said that Harris's DNC speech was a historic inflection point, which is kind of silly. But I'm telling you, RFK's speech is a historic inflection point. It heralds what may be a historic realignment in U.S. politics. And it just seems like you're watching The Last Statesman.
And we'll turn more to media coverage of both this campaign and general media coverage in politics in just a little bit. But I wanted to move on to another story and something we've been profiling here at the Herzog Foundation on our social media channels, as well as at readlion.com. And that's our favorite time of the year. It's Christian Teacher of the Year time. Michael, you've got another profile.
Yeah, and it's about science and Bible teacher Jacob Baker from River Oak Christian Academy in Jefferson City, Missouri, and I'm glad we're talking about him. This guy is so articulate. He is so spirited. In fact, he's Holy Spirited. I see a lot of Christian teachers through this process, and my own Herzog Foundation colleagues all seem to have the light of God in their eyes. And I've asked these Christian teachers, how do you do that? And he gives me the absolute best answer. And he pulls it from a poster that is in his science classroom that says, "You will be what you consume. You will be what you consume." And that he means that both biologically and spiritually. And so I ask, well, how do other people do it? And he talks about relationship with God, relationship with Jesus. And when you see the light of God in people's eyes, he says, that's him you're seeing.
I'll make a cheap plug for Making the Leap as well, another podcast that I'm a part of with my wife. We interview all 13 of our Teachers of the Year this year over a 3-part series. If you want to get to know all these people, tremendous sit-down conversations with each and every one. Josh, I want to turn to you about the news this week, and Valerie, too, who's in social media. Mark Zuckerberg's finally coming to Capitol Hill and admitting, as it turns out, government did ask me to censor speech, specifically as it related to COVID. And upon further review, I feel badly about that, Josh.
Yeah, it is remarkable, no pun intended. He has been grilled on Capitol Hill numerous times about these issues and has never really come out and admitted. He usually takes a defensive posture and just talks about safety and how they're just all about safety and preventing attacks and things like this. But he admitted basically the Biden-Harris administration pressured Facebook to censor COVID-19 content, and he admitted that they did. And so that pressure to censor was successful. He regretted those things, regretted that they so easily caved, and he also admitted specifically on the Hunter Biden laptop story that they suppressed that. They demoted that story while they had their fact checkers checking. He also said that wasn't the right policy and that they'll change that policy in the future so that if a story comes out that they fact check, he claims they won't demote it until and if a fact check comes back and says it's false. Now, I don't know how good that makes you feel. I at least feel like maybe the Elon Musk X free speech movement that seems to be happening is having a broader influence. That's what I'm hoping. But I think we'll have to just wait and see.
Valerie, you're literally in the social media business, and you and I have talked about this off the air as well. And you've seen, and we've talked about how social media is constantly squashing, shadow banning, silencing certain points of view, including, quite frankly, points of view that come out of this show. Is this maybe a crack in that maybe finally people are waking up and realizing that's the wrong way to go?
I really hope so. I'm a little concerned that people are going to stick to that loyalty of, no, what these people are telling me are real. But time and time and time again, we're seeing that it's not. That content is being censored because of an agenda that's being pushed. And, we've been saying all along that Meta as a whole has been censoring content. But, why didn't Mark Zuckerberg come out in the beginning and say, yes, I'm going to stop? I want to thank him for doing it now, but it took him way far too long.
Michael, altruistic, he's coming out here and saying, yep, sorry about that, you caught me, I won't do it again, or are there other reasons he's doing it?
Well, let me check my notes on that, Chris. He censored conservatives and still does. Spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to affect the 2020 election, many believe, to elect Biden. And since then, we've had 2 wars with untold thousands dead. We've had millions cross the border with untold Americans dead. We've had economic misery. We've had rampant crime. We've had conservative grandmas in jail. We've had regime political enemies in jail or with the threat of it. So, I'm wondering with that kind of laundry list, and I don't think I touched everything, I'm not sure an apology at this point is worth anything.
Yeah.
Final story of the week is the U.S. funding for Ukraine, Michael. You've written about this. It continues to flow. And one wonders, this is another one of those questions. I wonder, is it going to come up on maybe a presidential debate September 10th?
Well, we're talking about $175 billion to Ukraine. We're talking about $3 billion to Maui, the victims in Maui. That's 1.7% that of Ukraine funding. It's $5 billion would rebuild Maui, and that would be a rounding error for Ukraine. Combine that with illegals getting flown into the country, flown around the country, getting free housing, debit cards, and all kinds of other benefits. Oregon is giving $30,000 grants for home buying for illegals, and California is looking at 150,000 home loans for illegals. Sounds like America last.
I would ask just for fun, not that I necessarily told you I was going to ask you this today, guys, but Josh, as somebody who's in the news business, the Harris Walls ticket finally agrees to sit down in a pre-taped conversation with Dana Bash on CNN this week. It will be pre-taped. This will be the first conversation Kamala Harris has made herself available to a journalist of any kind, and she's doing it with her running mate. You have a reaction to that and just kind of the general what has been media silence on this ticket to date?
I think it's time for the media to let their anger be known. I don't know. Maybe they're not angry. They should be, because it's their job. And the American public have the right to know about their candidates and to see the press ask questions. And it's alarming that it's taken this long for it to happen. And the fact that Harris has her VP pick with her in that room, I think doesn't really help her case very much. We'll see how it goes, but I'm sure he'll be there to bail her out if needed. And that's how I personally feel about it.
And, of course, we will carry all of the coverage of that and anything else that should break in the coming week before our next show right here at readline.com. Before we wrap, I always like to ask the panel their favorite stories of the week. And, Valerie, we start with you.
So mine will be the Facebook censorship story. And the reason why is because I am all about bringing awareness to topics that are undercovered. And, there's a lot that's undercovered. As we've discovered, Facebook has been censoring for who knows how long. He only admitted to a certain amount of censorship. And so let's bring awareness to these topics. Don't believe everything that you see on social media, but make sure you're fact-checking yourself.
Josh Mann, your favorite?
We have a story on some Christian American Paralympics that are competing in the Paris Paralympics. And so I hope our readers will take a look.
Michael Ryan, what do you like this week?
Well, there's so many Facebook censorship stories to choose from. I'm not sure what Valerie was talking about, but mine is Meta's Facebook stifles college course on the dangers of Marxism. Facebook actually took down a post about a Hillsdale College course on the dangers of communism, and you have to wonder if it had been on the evils of capitalism, if it had been still up.
Readline.com, where you get all these stories and so much more every single day, each and every week. And that'll do it for us this week. Keep up to date on all the latest news at readline.com. And until next time, for all of us here at The Line, thanks for downloading the show.